Hey everybody, my name is Jim Farmer. I am the festival director of Out on Film, Atlanta's LGBTQ film festival, and I'm an arts reporter for Georgia Voice. The new film Miles School is a film looking at the life of Brandon Lee, a 16-year-old who in 1993 enrolled at a secondary school in a suburb of Glasgow, Scotland. What followed over the next 2 years became the stuff of legends. This is a film that I love. I saw it recently. I did not know this story. We're here with the director, Jono McLeod, and the star, Alan Cumming. Thanks both guys.
Thank you.
I knew nothing about this story. So I just sort of, I was amazed when I watched this. For both of you, how well known is this story in Scotland?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, it was huge when it's in Britain in general, actually, especially Scotland.
Yeah.
But it was a huge story in what, 94, was it? Or is it
actually 95, 93 the film begins, and 95, so it's a 2-year period that he spends as Brandon Lee. So yeah,
and it's major. I mean, and it's still major. I mean, we're still talking about it now.
Exactly.
Now the rest of the world knows.
Exactly. Jono, so you were a student at the time. How did you react? And I don't want to give too much away, but how did you react when you found out the secret about Brandon?
I mean, it actually it's kind of muted in that when you're a teenager, you're so focused on other things. Like,
exactly.
I remember getting the phone call to tell me, like, because we all heard a little while before the newspapers did. Word went round the kids, and I remember my friend Ross phoning me up and saying, "Jono, you'll never guess what. Carol snogged that guy up at the park yesterday. Oh, and by the way, Brandon Lee is not who we think he is." And that was the kind of order of what you were told. Yeah. So it was, and yeah. So basically, it wasn't until all the press made us realize that this was slightly bigger than we had anticipated. That's when we suddenly thought, "Geez, this is huge."
Exactly, Alan. I read that at one time you were actually supposed to make a movie about this subject.
I was I think in about 97. I was asked to direct this movie and to be in it, and so and then we're probably going to shoot it in 19. I think because I went to New York to do Cabaret, that kind of delayed things. But in 99, I was supposed to shoot it, but it all fell apart. So it's a funny thing. Like a quarter of a century later, it all came back to me, and films fall apart all the time. So it was just one of those things. You have to be sanguine about it. But it's interesting when a fascinating character or something, what a shame that's not going to happen, because there's several things like that. Several characters over the years, but it's just so rare that, and I'm so lucky actually that I was able to embody him in this other form, and in a way that I actually think is much better than my film would have been. This is much more about and by the people who actually experienced it. So I think it's much more fun and entertaining because of that.
So Jono, what made you want Alan for this?
Because, I mean, we were aware of this 1990s film.
I can hear you.
we were always aware that Alan was meant to be Brandon back in the 1990s. So we kind of grew up with this expectation that this movie was going to appear and it was going to be about our school. And when it didn't happen, it felt, to me, certainly it felt like one of the kind of great unmade Scottish movies. And that movie, Alan was meant to direct it and star in it. And we always wondered why nobody had ever told this story on film. We were all very suspicious when Drew Barrymore made Never Been Kissed a couple of years after that. But we finally realized that if nobody was going to tell this story, and really the only person who had been telling the story over the years was Brandon himself. He's published multiple accounts, he's given various interviews and stuff over the years. But the people who hadn't spoken were all of us, the classmates and teachers. So what I wanted to do was just assemble as many of those together as we're willing, and just try and figure out what on earth went on and how much of what Brandon says happened tallies with what we remember.
Gotcha. Alan, can you talk about the challenge of this? Because you're lip syncing to his words. How did you approach this? Doing this.
Well, I mean, it was kind of unlike anything I'd ever done. I just sort of listened to the tapes that Jono had given me, you know, of his interview with Brandon, and just let it sort of seep in. It was such a weird thing because I was, you know, there was sort of, I was making up this character, but it was already dictated how he sounded and yeah, at the same time, it wasn't. I don't know. The whole thing was a bit of a mind fuck, to be honest. And not someone that I knew such a lot about, and also someone who was a shapeshifter, and you were never really sure if what he was saying was the truth. So everything about it was like quicksand, you know. It was like and yeah, I had to somehow real and genuine and three-dimensional. So it was, you know, but you just dive into these things. I mean, I think you don't overthink it. And on the day of the days that we shot, it was just a question of, it was actually a really bizarre experience because it was, imagine we're in an old school, the crew's there, it's completely freezing because it's pre-vaccine COVID days, all the windows and doors for ventilation. It's Glasgow in December, it's fucking freezing. And we just hear over the speaker endlessly the same lines again and again and again. I said it was like an indoctrination for a cult. We could have started a cult, and it was just a bizarre. And also, I looked so insane. I mean, I think it's so funny. You know, people say to me, "Oh, you know, I saw you on a bus stop, and you're on the cover of this on a bus stop for this thing." And I go, "Yes, in the most unattractive hair and outfit I've had in some time." So it was a lot. There was a lot going on, yeah, it was bonkers. It was a bonkers thing to do, but actually, you know, sometimes I knew that the whole project was idiosyncratic, and that's what makes it so great. I think that it's such a weird story. You can only really tell it in a weird way.
Exactly. Jono, can you talk about Brandon, you know, wanting to participate and tell a story but not actually be seen for this?
Yeah, that was just his line in the sand. You know, when I made the approach to him, I hadn't seen him since he was Brandon in my high school. And so he basically said he was willing to meet with me and do the interview on the proviso that he would not ever appear on camera. Okay. If I could find a way to make a film and do that, then I was welcome to. I was aware of a movie from about maybe 10 years ago by a British director called Kyle Bernard. It's called The Arbor. And she had really successfully used lip sync throughout that film, but with multiple actors. So the challenge that I was kind of setting myself was I had to find an actor who could who we could hang the entire movie on, basically, and who could do this lip sync and do it well. And I mean, you know, I can't think of another Scottish actor who we could have gotten to do this as well as Alan, and how perfect that in a movie about going back in time and reconnecting with your past self, that my lead actor could do that and finally play this role that he was meant to play 25 years ago.
Exactly. This is for both of you. Obviously, this happened in the early 90s. Do you think something like this could happen in the current day with social media and the internet, and, you know, everybody is always being seen and everyone knows everything about everybody? Could this happen today?
I mean, I want to say yes, because I think that things like it happen all the time.
Exactly.
In terms of us believing incredible things. But I guess now it would be much easier to Google and find out, you know, if a story made sense. You know, if his hilarious backstory of the Canadian opera singing mum and the diplomat dad and everything, it would be easier to check up on that. And everybody Googles each other all the time now. So yeah, I think it would be. I mean, it's so interesting. Like, I'm friends with Monica Lewinsky, and she was saying about how I did a thing with her, and people said, "Do you think what happened to you would have been better or worse now with social media?" And she said, "Oh, she was one of the first people that was sort of renowned, shamed around the world because of the internet. Mm-hmm. But now with social media, she would have had some recourse to, like, tell her own story." So, what do you think, Jono?
I mean, I'm not even convinced it could have happened in any other school in Glasgow, if you know what I mean. I've got this thing that I think us kids in Bearsden were maybe just too polite to ask any questions. And I do wonder if Brandon had gone to the school that I was supposed to go to in Clydebank, the kind of neighbouring rougher town, whether those kids would have had him by the scruff of the neck and figured out what was going on a bit sooner than we did.
Yeah. My Old School opens in theaters July 22nd. It's fascinating. Thank you, director Jono McLeod, star Alan Cumming. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you
so much.
Have a good day.
See you.
Thanks so much.